When you capture a digital photograph, you don't really need to worry about whether the image is backwards. Unless you flip it, it's going to appear in the correct orientation. But with an analog image, you don't have that assurance. It's very easy to print an image backwards, for example, or to have a copy inverted in some way. And so, whenever possible, it can be a good idea to look for clues that might indicate that an image needs to be flipped. For example, with this photo, we can see that there was some writing, probably on the original print or perhaps on the glass plate, and that indicates 435, but it's written backwards. Immediately, you might assume that the image needs to be flipped, and you'd actually be correct in this case, but it's a very good idea not to jump to that conclusion, because you don't necessarily know on which side of the image that writing was written. For example, on the glass plate, it could have been written on the back of the image and simply be showing through. For this image, fortunately, we have another very obvious clue that lets us know the image is indeed backwards. If you look at the tint in the background here, you'll see US for United States, and that is backwards. So obviously we do need to flip this image horizontally so that that will appear correct. But again, keep in mind that just because you see some writing on the image doesn't automatically indicate the proper orientation for that photo. So in this case, we do know that we want to flip the image horizontally, and that calls for one of the transform commands. But we're not able to apply the transform commands to a locked background image layer. And so I'm going to start off by creating a copy of my background image layer by dragging the thumbnail for the background image layer down to the Create New Layer button, that blank sheet of paper icon at the bottom of the Layers panel. Now I could have just as easily double-clicked on the thumbnail for the background image layer and then clicked OK in the New Layer dialog. That would have converted the background image layer to a normal layer. But I'm taking the extra step of creating a background copy, which actually also doubles the file size, so that I can always go back to the original if I have any questions or if I decide that the transformation was not necessary. So it's just an extra layer of caution. With this background copy layer created, I can now go to the Edit menu and simply choose Transform followed by Flip Horizontal. Notice that we can flip horizontally, left to right, or vertically, top to bottom. But in this case, I need a horizontal flip, so I'll go ahead and choose Flip Horizontal from the Transform menu, and you'll see that the image is flipped. I'm essentially looking at a reversed version, at least in the horizontal aspect, of this original photo. So now you can see that the numbers 435 at the bottom are now correct, but more importantly, the actual elements within the photo are correct. So the tint now shows US rather than a backwards SU. And we could also look in other areas. Now in this case, we're not able to get enough detail. We don't have, for example, name badges on these soldiers, but if there were other elements, maybe an inscription on the cannon that we could use as the basis of our evaluation, so much the better. We want to try to make sure that we're orienting the image properly. Sometimes a person might have an obvious blemish on their face, for example, perhaps a mole that's on one side of their face that we can use as the basis of determining that orientation, but whenever possible, the key is to check the image for those clues and then flip as needed.